And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's in Culver City.
John, yesterday, while taking questions from the press on Gavin Newsom's statements about the immigration raids, President Donald Trump couldn't help himself and went into a tangent about high-speed rail.
That is the greatest. I've never seen cost overruns. I've seen cost.
Oh, wait, let me rewind it.
The governor's a nice guy, but he's grossly incompetent. When it comes to his railroad that he's building, where it's like 30 times over budget, nobody's ever seen anything like it. Now it doesn't even go to San Francisco and LA. It's way short of it. After years of work and overruns, like those contractors are some of the wealthiest people in the world. I guarantee you that, because that money goes to those contractors. They just did a number on the wallet of the people of California. That train, you should look at that train. That is the greatest. I've never seen cost overruns. I've seen cost overruns and great incompetence over my life. I've never seen anything like that.
Well, the train is something that he's always paid close attention to, because before he got into politics, he was a developer. And if you're a developer and you see a project going that far over budget and that far over on deadline, you know that there was a mark that that was calling the shots. 800-222-5222 is a telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. She is the managing editor at Red State. You can read her online at redstate.com and follow her on X at Jen Van Laar. Jennifer Van Laar, welcome.
Thank you. You know, while you were talking about the construction stuff, it reminded me how the Panama Canal only took 10 years to build. And look at our high-speed rail.
Yeah, give them 10 more, we still won't have it.
Right.
Jennifer, thank you so much for stopping by. And I got to say, we were getting emails. We're getting a lot of emails from people saying, look at these protests. Look at these riots. Look at what's going on in the streets of Los Angeles. This is not something that was impromptu. This is not something that was organic. This is something that is organized, that is well-funded. There is money behind it. Who exactly is doing that? And I thought to myself, well, if there's one person who can figure it out, it's Jennifer Van Laar. And lo and behold, that was the question that you investigated over at Red State. What did you find out when you started making phone calls?
So there's a lot of organizations within LA, as we all know, that are dedicated to this whole immigrants' rights, or what they call migrants' rights movement. But Shirla is by and far the biggest, most influential, and they've been on Donald Trump since 2015, since probably 2 weeks after that escalator ride. I'm sure you remember when Trump spoke to the Friends of Abe group in Brentwood in July of 2015, and there was a group out there with effigies of Donald Trump, and that was Chirla and the Party for Socialism and Liberation together doing that. So they are the ones basically behind it. I mean, I can't say that they're sending individual rioters checks, but they received $34 million of taxpayer funding in the fiscal year ending 2023, June 30th, 2023. So that just infuriated me. I mean, it's one thing to have Soros-funded NGOs. It's another thing to have our own tax dollars funding it.
I'll tell you, based on the reaction that we saw when Doge went after U.S. aid and Elon started finding out just exactly which organizations we were funding, not just here, by the way, but abroad, and he started asking questions, he said they were hair on fire from day one. And the fact that they were hair on fire from day one led him to believe that he struck pay dirt. And this is something that is clearly part of the business model for these organizations, where they have contacts in the government, they have politicians that they've supported. Sometimes they go from working for these organizations to being in elected office and back and forth, so on and so forth. And it's really an incestuous relationship where if Americans knew their tax dollars were paying for this stuff, they'd go nuts.
Absolutely. And it's Angelica Salas, who's the head of Chairless. She, coincidentally, the same year that Chirla's funding from taxpayer sources went from $12 million to $34 million, she was appointed to the California Racial Equity Commission by Gavin Newsom. I'm sure that was just all coincidental. And Karen Bass trumpeted that she got them $500,000 basically in funding from DHS, from Alejandro Mayorkas, her old comrade.
Now, you hear constant calls for NPR or PBS to be defunded because they're essentially an arm of the Democratic Party themselves, and the taxpayers foot the bill for a huge part of their operating expenses. And they claim, oh, it's only a small part of our budget. Most of our budget comes from endowments. It comes from private organizations. It comes from people who die and leave us in their will, from people who watch us and call the 800 number and give us money. It would hurt us, but it wouldn't prevent us from being able to put our product out there or keeping the lights on. How important is the government money to these organizations? If the government were to pool their money, would they collapse, or do they still have enough money coming in from other sources where they may not have the impact that they have now, but they'd still be able to stir the pot?
No, they would absolutely collapse. I mean, they might be able to do a few things, but they wouldn't be able to stir the pot the way that they have been. 75% of their funding is from either state or federal tax dollars. And of that 75% of their funding, 96% of that is from California. And specifically, the overwhelming bulk of that is from the California Department of Social Services for, quote, immigration services. So, like, helping people fill out their DACA forms or other things like that, or giving them legal services to stay here instead of being deported. And so why are we paying to help subvert federal law? That just seems completely wrong. And they also fund under this, I mean, it has to be coming out of some of this taxpayer dollars. They fund this rapid response network for the ICE raids. This 866 number goes to Chirla, and they broadcast out where federal agents are so that then they can all go protest. They do mentoring things on high school and college campuses. They call it leadership development. Well, where do we think all these college and high school kids are going? To the streets.
So it's a little bit like Planned Parenthood, where they say whenever you want to cut their funding, we provide pap smears for poor people. We provide doctor's visits for poor people. But in reality, you see them out on the streets protesting outside of the courthouse if there's going to be a big ruling on any issue involving abortion. They certainly have their scorecards for politicians running for office, where they always get behind the Democratic candidates. They are a political organization that pushes the interests of the Democratic Party, but they can't say that. They have to be someone who is nonpartisan and, oh, we're just really a healthcare provider.
Yeah, 1% of their budget, $285,000, went to actual migrant services. Another $7.5 million out of a total $44 million budget went to legal services, which basically is, like I said before, subverting federal law. And a total of about $8 million goes to their management and to, quote, organizing and to community outreach and all this other stuff. So they're using all of that. I think that's where the money for these T-shirts and their signs and everything that they hold in protesting, that's where that comes from.
And these organizations, they have to technically be nonpartisan, so they can't call themselves Democrat Chirla, but they can be Chirla, and they can go out there and advocate exclusively for Democratic causes, Democratic issues, Democratic politicians. They just can't overtly be partisan, even though they are.
Right, and then they have Chirla Action Fund, which is their PAC, which exclusively endorses Democrats. I think it was $500,000 they gave to Gavin Newsom. And Salas's husband, of course, is on the board of that. And she's on boards of other things like the California Wellness Commission, this California Power California Action. Sorry, there's so many of them. And that one's a Soros-funded voter registration drive group.
Well, what it sounds like to me is a money laundering operation where the state gives them money. They use the money on their political activities. Some of that money finds its way back to Newsom through the Political Action Committee, and Newsom keeps the dollars coming into the organization. It's just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And, oh, yeah, we're going to hire your friends and family. And, oh, yeah, you're going to hire my friends and family. And everyone's going to make out just fine.
That's exactly what it is. They're even right up at the CalPERS level with having some big shiny building in downtown LA, taxpayer funded.
So that's going on with Chirla and the signs and some of the costs associated with these riots, with these protests, with these freeway closures. What about the guy that was caught on tape in the truck going down to the riot with essentially face masks and gear that would be used to take on the cops with? Alex Michelson was one of the first to post about that, and he said it looked like they were passing out materials ready for a war zone. Do we know who that person was and who funded those masks?
He's been identified, and I didn't see a name, though, but I saw a picture where he is a Teamster, and I guess there's some subdivision in the Teamsters group that is more of a communist division of the Teamsters, and he is a member of that.
I was surprised that he wasn't wearing a mask when he was down there distributing those masks, because so many of them, they're wearing the face mask, the diapers that Barbara Ferrer wanted us to wear all through COVID and beyond, and they're concealing their faces, their identities, because of facial recognition. If they do something illegal, it's very easy for the authorities to figure out who they are and go after them. So many of them are wearing masks, even though COVID's not really a thing anymore. That guy was one of the few not wearing a mask, and that surprised me.
Well, you could see on his face, too, as people were filming it, that he realized he was being filmed, and you could kind of see the oh crap expression on his face, and he wished that he had that on. But it's ironic that they are all mad about the ICE officers having masks, but yet that's what they all go out and do.
Here's what I wonder. If you have organizations like Chirla or like this offshoot of the Teamsters that are financially supporting these people down there as they're destroying downtown LA, as they're looting businesses, as they're destroying our sidewalks, they're attacking buildings, they're destroying cars, Waymos, LAPD cruisers, you name it. I wonder if there's a way to sue them where you can say, listen, because you were the ones that underwrote all of these activities, and all of these activities led to this many Waymos being burned down and this many LAPD cruisers burned down and this many shops being looted, we're going to sue you. Because many of those shops, I saw, and I've referenced this before, one of the jewelry shops downtown that got looted, they didn't have any insurance at all. It's very difficult for jewelry shops to get insurance because the insurance market's a mess. But if you're that shopkeeper and you know that Chirla was the one that was funding this, can't you sue them?
I mean, I would think definitely as part of a criminal RICO thing, they could do that as part of the damages, like that they have to do restitution for. But I don't know what civil law that would be under, but I would think that you could, especially if you prove some kind of conspiracy. And Angelica Salas was out there herself on Friday afternoon. I'm sure you saw the press conference where she was out there with 3 or 4 members of the LA City Council, with state assembly people, state senators, all saying, yes, be loud, go out here and protest, go fight back. So that is inciting that riot.
And they were all out there to kiss the ring.
Yep.
What about Soros? Because Soros is someone who finances so much of the left, so much of left-wing activism in this country and abroad. So much of it is financed by him and his organizations, and really organizations that aren't even necessarily directly affiliated with him, but organizations that he helps fund in one way or another. Is there any evidence at all that George Soros was behind any of this?
Through Angelica Salas, yes. The only actual concrete connection I've found so far is Open Societies Foundation funding this Power California Action Group that has registered 100,000 voters in Los Angeles. I still have to go through, I think, the 8 other organizations that she's on the board of to see what Soros funding there might be.
And do we think that he's still calling the shots? Because every time I see a picture of him, I guess evil never dies. The guy looks like he's 9,000 years old and his skin looks like leather. I think he's over the age of 90. I know the son is a man about town now. He's dating Huma Abedin, who used to be Hillary Clinton's aide, who was married to Anthony Weiner at one point in time. And he likes to fancy himself as a kingmaker. Do you know which Soros is calling the shots right now with their fortune?
I mean, I think it would be the younger one because everyone knows that's the future. And I think at this point, there's not as much central coordination. They've brainwashed so many people into this cult that they just go about and do the work of it without really needing to be told or given direction.
After looking at all of the funding that was associated with these riots downtown, do you think this is going to be a one-off, or do you think that the intention of the investors is to make this go to big cities all over the country?
That's their intention, and also they're trying to provoke Trump into some kind of massive overreaction on it. I mean, you could see Newsom and Bass baiting him over and over and over again. And I'm really glad that they've basically kept the federal troops to the federal buildings and not really out in the streets and let LAPD handle that, because that would be playing into their hands. They want to create a situation where they're the martyrs, where they're being oppressed, to continue that throughout the country.
Jennifer Van Laar, managing editor at Red State. Excellent, excellent, excellent reporting. If you want to read more of Jennifer's reporting, you can do so at redstate.com, or you can just follow her on X at Jen Van Laar, where she has links to all of these relevant stories regarding who exactly is funding the riots in downtown L.A. Jennifer, thanks so much for stopping by. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, with the end of the show quickly approaching, if you want to continue listening to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Whether it's the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes.
Well, absolutely.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Let's do that right now. 790 KABC welcomes George Thurgood with special guest Foghat at the Pacific Amphitheater at the OC Fair on July 18th. Tickets are on sale now at packamp.com. But right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-790-5222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. All concert tickets include admission to the OC Fair. Tickets furnished by the Pacific Amphitheater. Good luck dialing.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. We're going to get to your calls in just a moment, but first, Randy, let's give an update on the U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California, Bill Asaley, in his efforts to go after that individual who was tossing Molotov cocktails.
Here it was this morning.
On to this now. Breaking news. U.S. Attorney Bill Asaley is announcing federal criminal charges related to the attacks on law enforcement. Let's listen.
The escalation of violence by these rioters poses a serious threat to our agents and the safety of the public. Throwing rocks, explosives, assaulting agents, and committing other acts of violence are extremely dangerous and will not be tolerated. The president had no choice but to call in the National Guard to protect our assets and our personnel. Our agents and our law enforcement were overwhelmed, and we are grateful for the help of the National Guard that we've received. The defendants charged in the complaints are accused of throwing Molotov cocktails at police officers and sheriff deputies who were called in to restore order after 2 demonstrations against federal immigration enforcement turned violent.
Yeah, those were the initial ones. I don't know if that was the outside agitators that were putting lighter fluid and vodka together and then tossing it with a rag.
And this happened right at the very beginning when, if you listen to the politicians like Bass, it started out fine, and then over time it got violent. No, it started out violent.
As alleged in the complaints, these defendants, one in Paramount, the other in downtown Los Angeles, threw Molotov cocktails at police officers. Last Saturday, one defendant, Emiliano Galvez, hid behind a fence and threw the destructive device at a sheriff's deputy, then ran away. Deputies gave chase and arrested him. That's the video you actually see playing right there. The following day, a police officer apprehended the other defendant, Raki Quigui, after
That's quite a name.
Yeah, no kidding.
Raki Quigui, after spotting him with a Molotov cocktail in his hand. Officers witnessed him.
I wish I could see what that name looks like on a rundown, because you would not pronounce it correctly.
Oh, no. Which means at some point in the future, that person will be a book guest, because I have no chance at pronouncing that name.
Raki Quigui, after spotting him with a Molotov cocktail in his hand. Officers witnessed him throw the device in the air and then arrested him with a lighter in his right hand.
Guess he's got evidence.
Yeah, that's not incriminating.
I commend our prosecutors and our law enforcement partners for swiftly taking action against these individuals. Our community must be kept safe for peaceful protests and against thugs and criminals looking to start trouble.
Not to mention all the people destroying the Waymos.
Yeah, which cost how much?
$200,000. They're Jaguars. They are not cheap.
Oof. Maybe that's why my insurance went up.
So that's what happened this morning with Bill Asaley. Now, while you were talking to Jennifer Van Laar, Nathan Hochman, the LA County DA, had a press conference, and there's a whole lot of charges being filed at some of the jackasses launching fireworks at officials and at sheriff's deputies and police officers. So we'll catch you into that tomorrow.
All right, let's go to Ken in Studio City. Ken, hello.
Hi, John. Hi, Randy. Okay, I've got 3 quick points to make. First of all, I hope you don't snatch my wig, as the gay guys say. First of all, John, earlier, I love you, man, but here's the thing. You said the job of the government is to take care of the citizens, and that in a normal world is true. But this is California. This is the upside-down world. The Democrats see their job as enabling and encouraging their special interest groups, which are the identity groups, the minorities, the mentally ill, and the drug addicted. They see that the regular, normal people who go to work, who pay their taxes, as not needing help. They are just to be mined for money, and like whenever there's property crimes, people have insurance. That's just property that can be replaced, and it really isn't, because a lot of times people lose heirlooms, they lose family possessions. It's not just property, and property is one of the most important things: life, liberty, and property in the structure, in the establishment of America. Life, liberty, and property. Second point. This audience, you and this audience, compared to the greater California voting public, it's very small. This audience understands the issues. But the liberals, they don't. I live on a street with little tiny houses that are each worth over $1 million. And these people are driving no longer their Tesla electrics. They got rid of the Teslas, but they're driving BMW electrics and Audi electric. They're doing just fine, and they believe what the politicians tell them. And they believe that all of their taxes are going for good. They just go to the trough of the lies and filth that the politicians and the media are putting in front of them. They go like pigs and they eat at the trough. My third point is, poor Greta Thunberg just got deported from Israel. The poor girl wasn't appreciated there. So I think that we should bring her here where she would be appreciated and help with these poor protesters, not rioters. But we need Greta Thunberg. Where is she when we need her?
Well, we have enough problems without importing her. And I love the fact that they put her on a plane, so now that she has to worry about her carbon footprint. Thank you for the call, sir.
Did he have a bird?
It sounded like he was at the zoo. I don't know. Maybe he's the one who inherited Dom DeLuise's parakeet. Let's go to Richard in San Clemente. Richard, hello.
Yes, I love your program, and I am amazed at the naivete. When I was a leader, a great leader, we never had these platitudes or anything like that. People would ask me, do you think history will treat you better back today than it did back then? You know what I say, John and Randy? Absolutely. 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 That's all I've got to say.
It honestly took me so long to realize this guy was doing a Nixon impression.
Well, Nixon went to San Clemente after he lost a couple of elections, the Western White House, right? I know that was Reagan.
He went to Yorba Linda.
No, but he moved to San Clemente at some point.
Okay.
Because there is a Mexican restaurant there that has a picture. I'm not making this up. If you live in San Clemente, you know what I'm talking about here. It's a Mexican restaurant, and they have a picture of the owner and Jerry Ford, and then there's a third person who's cut out of the picture, and all you see is his arm. And it's blown up to be about the size of a wall in the restaurant with the person cut out of the photo. And you talk to old-timers who lived there, and some of them were there when Nixon was living there, and they have Nixon stories. I wasn't expecting the ghost of Nixon to call in and weigh in on everything going on in California today, but you never know. 800-222-5222 is telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Mike writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. Are you guys sure that was the ghost of Nixon? Hell, I thought that was Lucille Ball's lung calling in.
Speaking of Lucille Ball's lung, that's what every hotel room in Laughlin, Nevada smells like. All right, let's go back to the phones and begin with Mark in Huntington Beach. Mark, hello.
Yeah, hey. Yeah, I was just going to say a couple things about the immigration thing. Those people are stupid because if they want that stuff to calm down, they need to be more low key. And I was going to say, I'm moving out. I came back to help my friend move out of here, probably to Las Vegas, but I'm from the Midwest, and we had a raid in the Midwest where I'm from, and they raided a meatpacking plant yesterday. Same thing happened, and all the people were outraged, but I mean, that's the way it goes. They were illegal, and the company was breaking the law, but I grew up in a pretty big city in the Midwest, as big as Las Vegas at least, and the immigrants there were mostly German and Polish, like my parents and grandparents, and they're low key. They don't tag stuff, spray paint stuff, or steal cars and do stuff like that. And I had my car stolen out here before, and I had things vandalized, and we just had stuff tagged in our garages in Huntington Beach. It's like, that's not being low key. So how about, that it's a problem with the culture part of it, with the immigration. It's like if they don't piss people off, maybe people wouldn't want to kick them out of the country so much. That's part of it.
But, all right. Well, thank you so much for the call, sir. I appreciate it. Let's go to Jerry in Orange. Jerry, hello.
Hi, John. I'm a longtime listener, and I'm calling about an issue that the gentleman you had on, JJ, the videographer, talking about San Francisco. So I have a few points. I'll make them quick. First of all, Governor Newsom, when he was San Francisco mayor, promised that he would solve homelessness. I believe it was 5 years, but let's give him 10. And that hasn't happened. We have spent billions of dollars in this state alone to solve homelessness. I want to know, where is the money? And I think that we need to pass laws. I know it's going to be hard to do in this state, where we audit all of these funds and they sunset if they don't prove. We'll give them 5 years to prove that they have had some kind of efficacy, because otherwise all they are is that the NGOs are just some kind of make work for Democratic donors. But I want to get to JJ, and you were talking about, with some horror about the NGOs going out and, seeing these either dead bodies or people who have overdosed and not doing anything about it, and kind of the horror of that. And I think that two things. One, I'm not sure that the addicts want to be revived. I'm not sure that it isn't simply a form of passive suicide. And when someone wakes them up with Narcan, and I believe that there may be a kind of a disappointment, like, oh, great, I'm still here, versus gone. And sadly, my last point is, I think that these drug overdoses and these kinds of homelessness and taking over of the streets, etc., I think it hardens the heart of ordinary people like me. I'm a very kind person. I feel for people who are struggling, but I begin to not care as much when that all we're doing is enabling them time after time after time to get their drugs, either steal for their drugs and or use clean needles. We enable them until they do finally pass away.
Well, I'm with you on that, because a lot of us have strong libertarian streaks, especially here on the West, where do what you want to do, make yourself happy. As long as you're not hurting anyone else, I really don't care. But the problem is that with drug addiction, what's happening is it's not just them hurting themselves, it's them making our parks unusable, and our sidewalks unusable, and our beaches unusable, and our libraries unusable, and public transit unusable, and certain zip codes unlivable. And when you say, hey, you're not allowed to do that, they say, well, hey, I've got an illness, I've got a sickness, so you can't kick me off the train. You can't kick me out of the library. And, oh, yeah, I'm going to destroy the bathroom at Starbucks, too. And you have to live with it, and you have to put up with it. And you push people to a point to where they say, I'm not willing to live with it. I'm not willing to put up with it. We gave you the opportunity to use all the drugs that you wanted. You fried your brains, and now you're ruining everything for everyone else. And my compassion for them is done. That being said, I don't want to see anyone dying on the streets. And the scene that he described in San Francisco is disgusting. And it's an indictment of our politicians. It's an indictment of harm reduction. It's an indictment of public health. All right, that's going to do it for us today, but we'll be back tomorrow at noon for another edition of The John Phillips Show.